Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Tales of EV podcast. It's a big ol' frickin' potential semi-series finale because this is likely my last episode for a while. Maybe Mike's.
It was good having you on the podcast, Drew. I remember starting this podcast and inviting you on in the early days.
Thank you.
It was a little bit
I'm
better
so
when you
grateful.
weren't here, but you've added some pizzazz while you've been here, and we've appreciated your
That's
colored
fair.
commentary on why efficiency is the worst thing ever, and that giant big trucks are the way to go with EVs, and why we need to just adopt a Lordstown approach with terrible efficiency, giant in-hub motors that allow us to just not go anywhere. And
Well, that's the endurance, right? It helps us endure through 174 miles of endurance.
oh my goodness. Kind of sad, honestly. I was a little sad to see that EPA rating after, I guess they've kind
Yes.
of been on hiatus with production, or it sounds like they've been, but maybe they're not. Who knows? But
Yeah.
the fact that they kept on touting, like, here's a design that is promoting efficiency in some way with, like, in-wheel motor, so that way there's less moving
Yeah, I thought that
parts.
would help with something at least.
It helps with probably what's it called, wear and tear of some axle or connecting piece between motors
Yeah.
and the wheel, but it probably increases complexity, so it's going to increase cost, even though it doesn't seem like the cost is too crazy with those trucks. I think it starts at like
Yeah.
30 or 40, I think. No, can't start at 30.
I thought it was 60,000.
Probably it starts, I'm probably thinking of the Fisker Ocean, but
Oh, that's
so many startups in the brain. But yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder, because they have like 109 kilowatt hour, my apologies, 109 kilowatt hour or 107 kilowatt hour battery in that thing, but
Right.
it doesn't go that far, so it has
No.
to be something with either the batteries that they're using or their design in terms of aero or some other losses, because it seems weird
Yeah.
that they have such a low range and a semi aerodynamic design and some
And the weight's not terribly high either. I mean, it's high, obviously, for
it's
a
around
truck, but
6,000, right?
it's like 6,500, they say, on the website. So it's lighter than a Rivian, but it gets like 20% worse energy consumption. So yeah, it's either they went with some really bizarre battery supplier. I don't think it's LFP. I feel like they would have said that, but
Because
it's
they
not.
are in the same. Well, they're in the factory that they started with. It's just now they got Foxconn and owning the building and building
Right.
whatever vehicles that they want to build in there eventually. So
Yeah.
it's safe to assume that maybe they're using some Chinese-made battery and all that.
Probably.
But who knows if
But
it's a 2170 or if it's a who knows what
it could be a super like horrible chassis design where they put cells into modules and then those modules into bigger modules that had to be triple, quadruple welded into the chassis, and it took way more.
It becomes the Hummer.
It's just poor engineering. Yeah. But I'm just like, this has the efficiency, I think, the same or worse than a Hummer, but it doesn't weigh 9,000 pounds. So, like, it has no right to be that inefficient.
You
for
have
what it
no
is.
right to be this terrible. You need to be better.
Well, I mean, the Hummer, you can just, like, look at it. It's like, okay, 215 kilowatt hour pack. Yeah, that's going to be a heavy. And then, like, super wide, super tall, huge wheels and everything.
Crazy
And
quirks and
opposite
features
of-
with it that just build
Yeah.
up the amount of absurdity that is with its inefficiencies in regards to
Right.
whatever features they want to do with crab walk, which is a lot more hardware.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not a lot more hardware, but still more hardware that they have to put into it to be able to do that.
Crazy suspension, rear wheel steering and everything. I can understand why it's so inefficient because it's this, but the endurance is just like inefficient and there's no reason for it. Like, I don't
Well,
understand
there's no
the justification.
visual reason that we can find right now. And also, we don't know if those specs are up to date, especially since they seem to not know what the difference is between energy and power.
Yeah. I don't know who did the tech spec thing. My hope is that, I don't know if they've made a statement. I haven't seen one. But my hope is that whoever did the EPA test cycle on the Endurance, like, screwed up somehow.
Hopefully.
Like, they I don't know, they left the doors open, or they they did the test at 90 miles per hour instead of 65,
They had
and
the hood
or
open.
yeah, they did it uphill the entire time, and this is just an inaccurate test. If that later came forward that they tested it improperly, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Thank you. But they're not saying anything. Lordstown doesn't seem to be coming forward with like, that's not right. We expected it to be much better than that.
Well,
Like
last
they
time
haven't
they
said
said
anything.
something like that, then someone else fired back, a certain company that has the same name as a blimp, and pointed at them saying that here's a lot of things
Goodyear.
that you are not doing good at the Goodyear. Anyways, last time this
Yeah.
happened, they went silent because they talked back. Someone else shoved some
Yeah.
facts in their face, and they're like, I'm going to keep quiet for now because last time someone tried fighting this specific company on this or group on this,
Mm-hmm.
well, their CEO is currently in court or has been found
Yeah.
2 out of 3 uh, on their counts of fraud or anything like that. So,
Oh, the humanity.
right. So who knows? But I do wish, or yeah, I wish them good luck and hope that this is just a misstep on the EPA's testing, or maybe it's something that I would hope they approach Monroe and Associates, and maybe Monroe
Yeah,
and
no kidding.
Associates can help them design something that's a little bit better or frugal, or at
Yeah.
least something to improve their design either structurally so that way they're not using that much welds or a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of components that they don't need in there per se, or if there's some other ways to get around it without redesigning the whole thing from the bottom up, because that's going to
Yeah.
cost a whole lot of time and money, and they're just starting to try to do production with it. So maybe some other things with some approaches to aero or other things like that, because it looks like an aerodynamic approach with the lip on the top of the roof and all that. Maybe they need a tonneau cover to help out
Yeah.
with.
Not like
Um,
super aero, but like reasonably aero, like as aerodynamic as an F-150 Lightning, I would imagine.
yeah, you'd hope, but right now it seems like the design is what it looks like. It seems like it's a stormtrooper that is just missing its shot all the time, and
That would have been a better name for it.
the stormtrooper, the
Stormtrooper.
Lordstown stormtrooper truck. I
You'd
don't know.
get some Star Wars fans on board, I think. You could
Probably.
you
Or
could
like the
fit it in there.
you could do like the dark helmet like trim, which like only comes in black, or, because that's what Ford does, is like they make the dark horse for the Mustang,
Yes.
and
Right.
you basically only get one color, which is like their blue metallic or whatever, but it's like a dark blue and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And maybe they could do that where it's like a black helmet, kind of like was it the Imperial pilots or Darth Vader or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. Make it a little bit more lean into like the Star Wars theme without explicitly saying this is the Darth Vader package or whatever like that, because then Disney's gonna come from. But make it
Call
stand
it
out.
Dark Helmet Man.
Yeah, something that's a little bit what's it called? Spaceballs
Space
themed.
Ballsy.
Yeah, right.
Tesla names things after Spaceballs all the time, and they don't seem to get in trouble, so
I think that
works out.
company is perfectly. I mean, it's a parody of a parody, right? And
Yeah,
already
yeah.
Disney was like, okay, whatever, you guys can exist. Whatever. We tried looking into it, but nothing. We couldn't find anything that would stand ground in court. So whatever. And then meanwhile, you got Tesla being like, we're just gonna take this material that's already been parodied and then just make it our own. Who knows? Um,
Did you see how Lordstown is trying to not get delisted on the stock exchange? So their stock was doing so poorly
mhm.
that they received notice from I forget if it's the SEC or the New York Stock Exchange saying, hey, your company's worthless. So we might like delist you, like you're not a public offering anymore.
Mhm.
So that's why Foxconn was trying to back out on the deal, because they were like, well, we came into this agreement that we were investing in a publicly traded company. So if you're no longer publicly traded, I don't think they really care if it's publicly traded. They were just looking for an easy out. They were
Right.
looking for a breach of contract. Like, gotcha. Okay, we're done. And then tried to back out. But so Lordstown did a reverse stock split. Have you ever heard of that? It's
So
news
they
to me.
just what?
1 for 15. So for every 15 shares of the company, that's converted into 1 share now.
Yikes! Sounds like Nikola needs to do that. and
Yeah, what
Go
is Nikola at?
EV and
Yeah, you're
Lucid
right.
and well, I think Rivian's
Oh
doing
my
decent
God.
right now,
Did
but they might need
did
to
you see the
invest soon.
Lucid news?
I heard that they're basically split. What was it? They're trying to put out more shares for the public so that way they can bump those numbers up a bit more, right?
No, they're selling their own stock so that
Okay, well,
they have more cash on hand, which means they um that's why basically at the time of recording this it went down 16% today, which it was already not very high. um Now it's at a, I think, low for not quite the year. It was a little bit lower in January, but almost an all-time low, because they basically put out a statement saying we are going to lower the value of our own stock in order to keep the company afloat. So
my goodness.
it's
It
it's
went
not a good position to be in.
on May 31st it was $7, which woo, and now it's
Yeah.
6.50 as of recording right now, which I guess
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's down a bit, but like comparing it to what it's been, it's kind of hovering around that $6 to $7 mark.
Yeah.
But
I
even
mean, before they switched it over, but I remember they did that reverse SPAC merger or whatever. Like before it was even listed on the stock exchange, it was $9 a share. So even the like early investors that bought in before it went public, that even they're down on their investment by like 30%,
I'm
which
pretty
is
sure I bought this at a
discouraging.
high at this point
Oh,
because
really?
I do own Lucid stock, and I
I'm
re-
sorry.
I remember it being higher than it is right now. Of course, if not, well,
Hmm.
I would have sold at this point. Yikes. Yeah, I'm not
Well,
gonna
the
get
good news
too
is you
deep
can
into
write
it.
that off as a loss.
Oh, thank goodness. Because that's what I love doing. Anyways,
Uh,
that's a bummer. As much as I kind of harp on Lucid, also, it's kind of just a bummer to see companies struggle, especially ones
hmm.
that are doing really cool and unique things. I passed by a Eureka Gold manufacturer plate Lucid Air. Uh,
Oh,
I guess it was the Grand Tour, or no, that would be the what do they call it? Not the Founders. It'd just be the launch edition.
Dream
The Dream.
Edition.
That's what it is. The Dream Edition. Thanks.
They named it after that one YouTuber.
The guy with the mask or whatever. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
that's all I know about that guy.
That's all you need to know.
That
They made a car about him, and he didn't show his face until he did.
would have been really great publicity. Is putting him in that car, like more than what I saw, which I think the Kilowatts put this out as well on Twitter, is a Lucid ad on a billboard in Silicon Valley. I passed by that on the 101 uh, yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was yesterday.
it's that advertising. It always works, right?
Oh,
It's so
right, especially
effective.
with the iPhone that's yellow and all that. All it does is make me
Someone's
remember
driving on the
why.
freeway, sees a billboard, Lucid. Oh, I should buy one of those. I didn't think about that. I don't know what the.
While you're stuck in traffic on the 101, because traffic on the 101, if you live in the Bay, you know
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
always there.
You
If
could be
not,
stuck in a really nice car in traffic right now.
that's actually what happened on the way back when I saw Lucid. I was stuck in bumper to bumper traffic, and slowly the lane that I was in was going a little bit quicker than, of course, the one in the right lane. In the right lane, there was a nice Aston Martin, and then right in front of it was the Lucid Air Dream Edition in Eureka Gold, which my favorite color
uh,
probably.
wow. Okay.
But even so, it was just fun. Anyways, speaking of which, wanted to get this in as well because I mentioned that I drove up on the 101, which I usually don't, because that's basically from South Bay to North Bay. That's one route to get to San Francisco. Another one is
Yeah.
going through Oakland and all that. But I went up to 101 to do a test drive of another electric vehicle.
You've been teasing me with this
I've
all
been
week, and
teasing
you
it all
won't
week.
tell me what it is.
So
And
I
I'm
test
mad.
drove a Tesla semi. No, no.
Is it this one?
It
Is
is.
it the little one?
It is not.
I could test drive this one.
I do not have Ant-Man powers and the ability to electrify anything that I can touch that makes itself propel itself forward in any meaningful manner. No, I got to test drive my second electric truck.
Ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Not the Endurance, I hope.
Oh, 12, 3 endurances. No. Um, I
Wait.
I got to test drive the R1T, not test ride, but
Yes!
test drive it, and
Wow.
that thing was fun.
Okay. You've done every step of the process now. We went to the first mile event together and you just got to sit in the Rivian and crawl through the gear tunnel yourself. And
Get
then they
started.
had that little Bay Area hangout where you got to ride along in one,
Hmm.
which is still the second most viewed video on this channel, I think.
Thanks, Randy.
Now, suck it, Randy. Now you got to actually pump it. What was it like? Tell me every detail.
I think my
Where was
wife
Jupiter at the time?
ascending. Um, very funny joke. So I got to drive it from their service center in San Francisco to some parking lot, just I think a couple miles north. And then my wife got
Okay.
to drive it back from that parking lot to the service
Oh,
center.
cool. She
And
got it too.
yeah, so she got to drive it as well. And
Nice.
what was, I think, a really great summary of it is what my wife
Mm-hmm.
basically put it as was it felt
Okay.
like a mix between both of our cars. So I drive the Model Y and she drives the
Ooh.
Ram. It felt like
Interesting. That's a
driving
compliment.
kind of, yeah, she loves her Ram, but she said that it was kind of that in the bad way because it felt like you're driving the Y, but you're just a tiny bit
Mm-hmm.
higher up and
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
driving a quad motor launch edition. I think it seemed like it was a launch edition. Maybe it wasn't, but at least it was a quad motor.
Nice.
I think it was the adventure package. It had nice interior and all the typical black
They
interior.
look beautiful.
Yeah. We drove a silver one, by the way,
Ooh. That's
and
my favorite color. I
nice.
love that one. Oh, and the Red Canyon too?
So I'll get to that, but basically, it felt
Okay.
like driving the Y, but it was a little bit higher and had a little bit different proportions. It didn't feel big like a Ram
Okay.
per se, so that I guess kind of gets a plus. But
I like that.
you
Yeah.
knew that you were driving a truck.
Yeah.
The con was that like we expected it to go or feel a little bit quicker because I think it's got 0 to 60 in like 3.1 seconds or something like that. I forget.
I heard 3, but it
Okay.
wasn't quick?
It didn't feel quick. It felt like driving the Y, but just bigger. So that was kind of
Really? Was it in like
we were
not sport mode or
in
something?
yeah we were in all-purpose mode, so it probably knocked our
Oh, okay.
acceleration down a bit, which is kind of funny because in a Tesla you don't have to put it into any mode necessarily. Like standard and sport still gets you the same acceleration, I believe. If there is a sport, I don't think there is even
Oh,
a sport
really?
mode in Tesla. I think that's sport
I wouldn't
steering.
know.
So it's either
I'm on
standard or
chill mode
chill.
all the time.
Right, chills. I think the only way to knock down that or knock up that
Yeah.
acceleration.
But you
Anyways,
have to put it manually in chill anyway. It's not default.
right. Where with the Rivian, you've got so many different options, which that was fun. Going through all
Uh-huh.
the different options, it kind of actually made me a little bit queasy
Really?
because there's two people. There is Matt, who's been there for about 7 months. Hi, Matt. If you're listening, if not, totally fine. He's been there for 7 months. He was one of the. They're not salesmen. Basically,
Oh. Delivery specialist
I
or
guess a
something?
specialist, some delivery specialist or whatever.
It
He
should have
was
some nature themed title. He's
yeah.
a Rivian tree.
I don't know. He was basically totally derailed me there. He was helping another guy who just started like a month ago, so he was shadowing Matt. But so we had two Rivian employees with us on this trip, but they were basically clicking through all the different options. And man, that thing does adjust really quickly with like if you put
Yeah.
in off-road mode, you feel it going up, but like it goes like front back or back front and then gets you up
Oh,
in
okay.
terms of suspension.
Yeah, yeah.
Or going down to sport, like it goes quick, but like it feels a little bit almost like one of those low riders that have the adjustable shock suspension or I guess pneumatic suspension or whatever, where like they're doing crazy like inclinations and all that. You've probably seen it like
Yeah, yeah.
car shows or whatever. It felt kind of like that.
Right.
It was giving me a little bit of not seasickness because I'm not on the seat, but a little bit of car sickness, basically moving up and down very quickly
Right.
and going through different inclinations. But otherwise, very impressive that it was able to achieve those modes like on the
Mm-hmm.
fly. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, yeah, it was interesting. I didn't really get to test out the software too much because it was a quick test ride or test drive.
Right.
And
Uh-huh.
also, I only got it for like driving up to a parking lot, and then my wife got it from the parking lot back. I didn't really get to punch it as much as my wife did either, so I didn't really get to feel the acceleration behind the wheel, but I
Okay.
did get to feel it in the passenger seat behind her. And I wanted to mention with that, you sit higher, in which this is something that I forgot about at the
Mm.
first mile event, is that you're basically like, it feels like you're on a riser above, almost like you're watching a play or at the movies or something like that.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
felt like you're a bit above the driver, which both me and my
Hmm.
wife didn't really like at all. We kind of like with our
Mm.
Y that you kind of sit into it, like kind of like you do with the
Yeah.
three, basically. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
you've got like a headrest kind of sticking in front of you where you can't really see in front of you too much. But that's nice for if you're a tall person because you got more headspace, so you're able to like stretch and move around a little
Sure.
bit. While in the back of the R1T, you don't really have that because if you're a
Mm-hmm.
tall person like me, you don't really have too much room per se to kind of stretch your neck and head and body around too much. So
Yeah.
that was kind of like a it's a minor like disappointment, but otherwise it was
Mm-hmm.
just weird. We didn't really like that too much. Along
Okay.
with that, what was some other things? They
Was it
showed.
the? Do you think it's the gear tunnel position that kind of pushes this back row up a little higher?
I think so. In
Okay.
which I'm fully okay with that. In the
Okay.
context that it
Worthy
has,
compromise.
it's a worthy compromise with the utility that you get with the gear tunnel.
Yeah.
And be able to excuse it a whole lot more if it had the camp kitchen, but it doesn't. So,
Yeah. That's true.
but
Come on.
what was the other thing? Oh, I totally forgot. Otherwise, I'll probably get to it later.
Okay.
We walked around the vehicle, looked at it, and all that. It was nice seeing all the different things that we've seen before at the first mile event with the frunk and the hidden trunk underneath the bed of the
Oh
R1T.
yeah.
Um,
There's a ton of
yeah, kind
space.
of remind me that, oh wait, you can still use this kind of like a Model 3 or Model Y with that extra like covered space that's
Right.
somewhat lockable, I guess. Yeah, it is
Mm-hmm.
lockable because you can't really reach the latch unless you open the
Did
bed.
the ones you check out have tonneau covers on them?
They did not.
Oh, okay.
Or,
Interesting.
well, actually, think about it now. I think it did. It probably had one of the automatic ones on it
Oh.
because they used that one as the test drive one that we drove. So
Hmm.
it still probably had the automatic cover on it. It's just we never pressed it. Probably because they didn't want to have it break.
Yeah, I bet.
And then
They're
also, I
like,
guess,
don't touch that.
yeah, don't do it, it'll break. Um,
Yeah.
but otherwise, it was a fun time. What was very surprising is going there and realizing that it's not just like a few Rivians because you and I have only seen like a handful of them, whether it's in the wild or in person, only a few of them together. Going to the
Mm-hmm.
service center, there was Rivians left and right as we walked in front of it. There
Yeah.
was just like a whole bunch just sitting right there, all different R1Ss, a crazy amount of them. Uh, a few
Wow.
R1Ts, but like it was a lot of R1Ss, which just makes me think that
That's
people are in
beautiful.
love with the SUV and all that. A lot
Yeah.
of that forest green. There's a lot of people that like the forest green color or the white.
There's many Randys.
Right. I immediately thought of him. But my favorite was the Red Canyon that we parked next to after the test drive. And
Mm,
if I were to get
I love that
a
color too.
Rivian, I think after this test drive, my wife and I both agreed that we would probably get an R1S just because we carry a bunch of dogs with us and a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
stuff with us. So we need the space.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single time we go for a road trip in the Y, we fill up the whole car. So we could do the same
Right.
with the R1T, but we don't want to put any dogs outside in the bed if we've got other people in the car as well. It'd make much more sense just to fold down the third row, put the dogs back there,
Mm-hmm.
and then put people in the second row, and then have the two of us in the front row. So the
Yeah.
R1S seems a lot more appealing after driving the R1T. R1T is great. It's just thinking about it with our use case, the R1S seems to fit that better.
Makes sense. That's what all their orders are for, apparently. That's like the vast majority of their reservations are all for the R1S.
Right, and the R1S in that red canyon color, phenomenal. It kind of reminds me of a old Ford Bronco that my
Oh, yeah,
father-in-law had.
yeah.
It's kind of that same rusty color that at least his Bronco had. That he sold it,
Mm-hmm.
but it kind of reminded me of that. And it looks amazing in
It's
person and all
gorgeous.
that. I think that very same day I saw R1T in the Red Canyon as well. So it was kind of
Mm.
funny seeing both of those. Not really, kind of rare, but like I don't know. I live in the Bay Area. You see
Yeah, yeah.
rare-ish EVs every day. Like today, I drove around and
Mm-hmm.
basically, I think maybe every like minute or two I saw a lightning, and then
Wow.
every like
Yeah, they're really popular up here, too.
right, and then like maybe every 5 or 10 minutes I saw a Rivian. So they're littered everywhere. People are buying these things, whether they want to use them as a daily commuter or they actually use them as a
Yeah,
utility vehicle
yeah.
and all that. It doesn't matter at this point. But
Uh-huh.
it was a fun time, even though it was a long drive up the peninsula to them. I wish we got to test drive them in Palo Alto, where they've got, I don't know if it's a service center, but at least they have an office there where they do a bunch of engineering. It would have been nice to test
Mm-hmm.
it there so that way I wouldn't have to drive too far from
Right.
my job in South Bay. But otherwise, yeah. So it was fun. It was a great time. I enjoyed it thoroughly and thanked them profusely uh, with the opportunity. It was great. They, of course,
Good,
were
good.
just like, "Are you gonna buy one?" I'm like, "I'm gonna think about it, of course." Like,
Yeah.
I've got no intention on buying one right now. Um,
Sure.
but it is appealing, especially with the idea that if anyone crashes into my Ram today,
Mm-hmm.
we would be able to replace it with, if we wanted to get a similar car, we could, or go for like the 14-day or more or less or whatever order thing that Rivian's doing with R1T, where basically you can
Oh,
get
yeah.
one that's basically nearby or is available to you right now.
I heard about that. Yeah.
They were also
They're
was
pretty available.
yeah, the not salesmen were talking about it as well. I'm like, yeah, sounds like a pretty good deal, but let me know when the R1S is on that list, and maybe I'll be a little bit more tempted.
Yeah, yeah.
If I had the money.
Absolutely.
I don't have any money for this stuff, but very cool vehicles. I loved just being able to drive it as well and compare it to the Lightning in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like the Lightning felt quicker, but also like
Yeah. It's
that
probably just an acceleration mode thing.
yeah, and also I got out. Was it that day? I think we were driving around. No, I was driving the Y that day as well. Never mind. I was gonna say I was comparing truck to truck. I was,
Mm-hmm.
anyways. So it was fun. Checking off
Good.
that felt great. Being able to drive a Rivian after, I don't know, it's been like 2 years. Ever since
Yeah.
we first saw one at the first mile event, I think.
It's been a while now.
Just kind of bonkers now, but
That's awesome.
yeah, being able to drive it, which is nice, and then also knowing that I got to test drive 2 EV trucks that are on the market right now. Out of, I guess, is it 3 that are available? Next,
Eh.
I need to drive the Hummer next, which I don't even know how
Yeah, I was
that'd
gonna
be
say.
possible.
Well, we'll count the Hummer. I won't count the Endurance as available.
Not really.
But I mean, should we even count the Hummer as a truck? Is that really what it is?
Well, they do offer a truck or a pickup and an SUV version of it, but
Eh.
it's
That bed is so weird.
I don't know. I'd say if we were doing a tier list again, which would have been fun
Yeah.
if we did one today.
Yeah, how would you rank it?
Well, maybe we'll tease that for another time. But the Lordstown would probably sit near the GMC Hummer.
Yeah.
At this
That'd
point.
be at the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, I won't save it. I would say at this point, after the announcement we got mere hours after recording last week's episode,
Oh my goodness. What timing?
I am so much of a Ford fanboy at this point. Like,
Mhm.
I'm digging the lightning more every day, and I'm losing more and more interest in the Rivian the less they announce nothing about switching to NACS.
Right.
It's like, please, you're next. I feel like that's. I ran several polls, like, who do you think will announce the transition to NACS next? Most people were voting Rivian, which I find interesting. Why do you think? Do you believe that? Who would you vote for next? And also, why do you think people vote Rivian?
Probably because people love Rivian and they are probably hoping that this one random poll online with their vote on it might pick up some traction and make Rivian think maybe we should put the NACS connector on there. Uh,
Yeah,
I forget what you had on your list, so I'm trying to find it right now.
I'm looking at it right now. We got over 2,000 votes. 48% said Rivian, which is pretty high. The
Okay.
next highest at 18% is Hyundai slash Kia, so that just means like the GMP
Hmm.
platform, I guess. 15% after that said GM, which I was surprised by. I didn't expect GM to be so high. And then after that, 10% Lucid, which also I don't agree with. VW is at 9%. So
Interesting.
vast majority of people are like Rivian's next, Rivian's
You're
next.
looking at the YouTube one, right?
Yeah, because I think
Okay.
that got the most votes total.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm looking at the Twitter one that has like 200 votes or something like that, and it kind of stacks up the same. But VW has like 10,
Yeah.
Lucid has 16, GM has 15,
Okay.
Rivian has 60. I think it makes sense
60.
for
Wow.
Rivian to switch because they can act on it quicker because they've already been in on the whole. We're making our own software. We're not going to
Mm.
adopt CarPlay or anything like that. We're going to make it custom for our own customers,
Yeah.
and let them kind of decide what they want, and we can act on it and give them what they
Mm-hmm.
want, which makes it a little bit more transparent and also makes it a lot more fun as an experience of owning those cars. So
Yeah.
they definitely have the capacity to switch to NACS quicker than any other company. I would say if you really
Hmm.
wanted to, like if you wanted to light a fire under their booty, um, I think Rivian could probably switch to NACS within a year, easily.
Hmm.
Uh, it
I might
just
argue Lucid could switch faster because they don't have their own chargers and they're
true.
building barely anything, whereas
Yeah.
Rivian is building lots of vehicles. But I want everyone to switch. To be fair,
Oh,
so
me too.
I won't complain.
Right. I think my slight annoy oh not slight annoyance my slight bias is that Tesla doesn't really, or they're not really a fan of Lucid because they had engine. Well, I guess the same thing for Rivian. They had engineers defect
Hmm.
and then make their own company when they could have helped
True.
out with Model S or X or 3 or Y or anything like that. But at the same time, you've had uh, Lucid actively kind of challenging Tesla at their own game in multiple ways with having a faster car or longer range,
Oh yeah, yeah.
or like, hey, we can also make our own destination charger or power pack, or not power pack, but um, home energy system and all that.
Yeah, vehicle to whatever.
Where I don't think I've seen that actually deployed yet, or even a
Me
product that you
neither.
can buy yet, which is kind of
They've
funny.
got so much
Cause
bigger fish to fry.
it's been like 3 years at this point, I think. Maybe it's been. It's probably close to 3 since they made that
Yeah,
announcement.
close to 3. Mm-hmm.
And we haven't seen any progress towards that. So yeah, I'd say at the rate that they're building cars, Lucid definitely could switch to it quicker. But with like the whole maybe I wouldn't call it political, but at least like their relationship with Tesla isn't as favorable, and Tesla might not be as willing to not cut corners, but at least make things a little bit easier for Lucid to adopt the port and use
Hmm.
superchargers compared to Ford. Because like it sounded like from what Jim and Elon were talking about on Twitter Spaces last week, because I listened to the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um,
Me too.
what it sounded like is like Elon was totally for it, Jim was totally for it. They wanted to try to integrate Ford into the supercharging network as best as possible. And so
Yeah.
that's why I think it's going to take until 2025 for the NACS connector to be in a Lightning or Mach E or e-transit or whatever
Well, he
comes
called it
next.
their next generation, whatever.
Right.
So I assume that's the T, because he said it would be like at their higher voltage vehicle, which I believe is their T3 project, which is supposed to be more radical, more aero. The way I interpret that is it means Ford Cybertruck is going to have NACS, which excites
Possibly.
me.
That'd be cool. At least I would hope that they'd want to switch everything else to Next as well, so that way they don't leave current customers who want to buy a Lightning but also want to charge a supercharger without buying an adapter in the dust. But maybe that is the solution. Is just
Yeah,
you
it
have
only
to buy an
makes
adapter.
sense if you're going to
But
have one vehicle with NACS that the rest would also have
sure.
NACS
But I guess what I'm
eventually.
getting at is that like Tesla is perfectly willing to help out Ford with like get their app together and to shake hands
Hmm.
with their supercharging networks a little bit better than their
Yeah.
own, so that way they're not forcing Ford customers to get the Tesla app and then do the whole
Hmm.
charging thing like they're doing today. Because that's kind of a headache. Because you don't want like a Ford customer to be like, I have to get a Tesla app. No, let me just use the Ford app, but let me do this. Like Tesla's more than
Right.
willing to give Ford kind of like the glory in regards to you can have it on your app. We'll help you with it. So that way, when you go to supercharge, easy peasy, and also with the voltage and just the charging characteristics of the Lightning and the Mach E and the E Transit
True.
shouldn't be as much of a problem with any speed bumps. Where
That
with
might stop Lucid
that's
because
what
they
I'm
have
trying to
the
get
higher
at.
voltage.
Lucid has a
Yeah.
higher voltage, and it'd be a lot more problems to solve there. And along with that, like if Lucid wanted to do the same thing with like their own app, like the Ford Pass app and all that, like it would be.
Hmm.
I don't think Tesla would be as willing, especially after all the bad blood that they've had before. But I guess you can maybe say the same with Ford saying specific words about the Mach
The
E,
Model E.
the Model E, and then also my favorite is when the Lightning kind of had its Giga Texas like delivery event day with the F
Oh,
150
yeah,
Lightnings.
yeah.
Were like, we're
You
starting
can
production.
charge your friends' cars. You can charge your friends' Teslas. I still didn't understand what he was trying to
Oh, I
say there,
love
but
it.
all
With
water under the bridge now.
you
I'm
can
willing to
charge
forgive.
other EVs
Yeah.
like your friend's Tesla or something. I think it was something close to that. Made me crack up. I love it. But at least
I don't understand it. Okay,
I feel
whatever.
like that comments. I don't know. It's kind of tough to. It's rough water, basically, not to
Hmm.
tread, but also navigate both for the companies, but then also for us to try to figure out if it would be even possible for Lucid to get in, and if so, would it be a smooth transition or would it be a rough transition? What
But you
things
really think Tesla would like deny the company access because of bad blood?
I wouldn't say so, no, but I think egos might get in the way, like with Peter Rawlinson and Elon Musk, where
Hmm.
they don't seem to have that mutual respect anymore compared to Ford and Tesla, or specifically Jim and Elon, where Ford's been
Hmm.
around for a while. They've made their name in the industry, and now
Yeah.
they're willing to be humble and show that hey, we actually need your help and we've been
Yeah.
around for so long and we've propelled automobiles to this level. Can you help us take the next step? And that might be
Hmm.
seen in a better light by the people who have been revolutionizing EVs like Tesla or being Tesla. Um, to be like, sure, let's help out you because you've done your part. Let's usher you
Hmm.
into the future and we'll help you in whatever way we can. Where with like Lucid, it's just kind of they sprouted out from Tesla as competition. They wanted to do their
Yeah.
own thing, and they actively were pointing and laughing at Tesla, saying, "Haha, you guys have to do that. That's hilarious. We've got our own
Right.
version of it that's better." Um,
Hmm.
Maybe not verbatim, but that's what it feels like to me from the outsider's perspective, or at least that's what I've observed. Is
Yeah.
it doesn't seem Lucid hasn't shown anything out of respect, or at least hasn't done anything to earn Tesla's respect. And I wouldn't say that they have to do something to have Tesla make a deal with them, but
I
it
would think
it,
so.
it hasn't been, or it's been hurting them in regards to these kind of like throwing of rocks at each other, where they could have
Hmm.
just collaborated at the beginning, or I don't know. It I guess what I'm trying to get at is that it seems less likely from my standpoint for Lucid to actually get the deal done with integrating NACS into their vehicles, even if manufacturing wise it might be easier because they're making less cars, um, versus like Rivian, where they kind of have
Their
been
voltage is more online with
yeah, well,
superchargers.
in terms of just the components in the vehicles, it's probably a little
Yeah,
bit more compatible. The only
yeah.
thing you have to do is change up the wiring and all that. And Sam Monroe's already shown that it's a feat because it's a whole bunch of cables and all that, and Newport, and
Mm-hmm.
you might have to change the location. Maybe you don't, but a whole lot of different engineering struggles that you might have to go through. But it is possible, and I would think,
Worth it, I
yeah,
think.
and also Rivian's not really competing with Tesla per se in terms of like direct competition, right? They're focusing on adventure vehicles. They have their own type of motto, their own type of
True.
lifestyle. The R1T and the Cybertruck aren't really, well, you could say that they're competing, but I would say they've got totally different markets. You've got kind of like the weekend warrior. Ooh, maybe I'm talking myself in a box then because it seems like a lot of people are buying the
No, I'd agree. I think just
R1T,
from a
or was it?
design perspective, I'm sure there's some overlap, but there's probably not a lot considering how different they are in size,
Sure.
style, software. I think Rivian is also, I mean, you're the one who drove it, not me, but to me, Rivian gives off a lot more of a luxurious vibe, at least right now, than the Cybertruck does, based on the leaked interior. Is like it looks very basic, it looks very cheap.
Hmm.
Like I don't think the Cybertruck's gonna have ventilated and cooled seats, but the Rivian does. Um,
Maybe. Who knows?
and
At least I would.
the Rivian
I
exists.
right. I would concede the fact that they're both kind of lifestyle trucks in a way. They're not really like traditional workman type trucks. They're more of like adventure, or I commute with this to work, basically, or like I show
But I
this
mean,
off in
yeah,
parking
if, you
lots.
could argue the same thing with F-150 Lightning. I mean, you could say Mach
Sure.
E competes with Model Y, but that didn't stop Tesla from offering it to them. So
Very
I don't
true.
think I don't think the product offering or even I hope the bad blood wouldn't prevent them because I think that could potentially look really bad for Tesla. If Lucid came out and said, "We tried to adopt NACS, but Tesla won't let us."
Well, Bollinger already
That's
did that, right? And they basically
well,
said we
that
got
was
left on red.
before NACS was like an open thing.
Sure, right. But still publicly they came out saying, we asked Tesla and Tesla didn't respond, but that
Yeah.
hasn't really
I just
stopped
think it'd be
much.
different now if
Very
Tesla
true.
does start saying yes to some, like Ford, and then doesn't say yes to other. Well, we don't
Right.
like you, Peter.
Now that would be an interesting conversation topic, right? The fact that Tesla's acting more like a bouncer to their walled garden that is the supercharging network. Saying you can come
I
in,
don't
you can
think it's
come in,
walled
you can't,
personally.
you
Like
can, you cannot. Who knows?
I don't have proof to back this up, but I'm pretty sure Tesla's open to anyone using it. They just it's up to them to ask. And Ford's just kind of the first manufacturer to actually ask. Aptera asked, but they weren't in production. So
Right.
it's
And
not
same with
fair to
Bollinger
say
as
yet.
well. So
True.
I
They were in
concede
prototype days.
that my argument does have pinholes and flaws in it. But at least in my gut, I feel like Rivian is a lot more set up for success in regards to Adopt NACS than
Mm-hmm.
Lucid. Unless,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not too sure. I just don't. This is not
But you don't
any.
think the next person to switch, assuming you think anyone will,
Sure.
you think it's more likely to be a startup than a legacy automaker like GM or
Honestly,
Hyundai?
I wouldn't be surprised at this point if Canoe asks Tesla to use the NACS port. Because Canoe's kind of just going
Sure.
everywhere with like
Uh
all
huh.
its tendrils asking everyone, Alaskan Airlines, Walmart,
Whatever boosts the stock, right?
Chipotle, whoever else, like grab. I mean,
Chipotle.
I don't know.
They're just like whatever makes us look good. We'll do that. Sure, let's switch to Nax. Why not?
Right. So I feel like Canoo has a better shot. It might be
Hmm.
more likely than Lucid, but that's just my opinion. I'd say
Yeah.
it's maybe not backed up by complete logic, but
Okay.
it does have some interesting talking points.
Hmm.
I'm allowed to
I'm just
have
so
my own
happy.
opinion on this
Yeah.
podcast, I'd hope. But at
Yeah.
least it's kind of, I don't know. It's hard to describe, in my opinion. I'd have to think on it and convey it a little bit clearer the next time we do a podcast. But I would say out of this list, I think, yeah,
Hmm.
I voted for Rivian on this list. But
I think I did too.
you voted on your own thing. Uh,
Yeah.
I would
I've
say
got alts.
it'd probably, in the order that I would think, if we're only dealing with these four companies, it'd probably be Rivian who adopts it first, then VW next, and
Mm.
then Lucid, and then GM. No, I'd say GM before Lucid. I don't know. I think there might be on even ground for me. It might be just like a
Yeah, I was
three-tier
gonna
list.
say I could. Both of them feel stubborn, but to a certain
Yes.
extent.
Maybe
I feel like
Lucid and
I'm
GM team up then.
hoping.
So then we get this
Yeah.
weird. And then maybe Rivian joins in as well. So you get like the CCS group, and then you get the NACS group, and it just becomes a duopoly like most things. Or maybe not most things, but many things.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I'm just so happy that a big automaker like Ford is doing it because
Right.
I think it will cause a domino effect. I feel like if you have Tesla, who's already huge, and Ford, who's decently huge compared to the other guys, both agreeing on one connector, now to not switch to that connector, it feels like you're old, you're yesterday's tech, and you're kind of the only obstacle I could see with VW is the fact that they kind of started Electrify America.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that would be a really crucial domino in the lineup because if VW switches to NACS, more than likely EA is going to start offering NACS at their chargers because they're like, well, heck, most EVs on the road are NACS at this point, and you can't just say all Teslas are NACS. Now you have to say all Mach-E's and the whatever the T3 is and the Lightnings. Those are all NACS, and all the Teslas are NACS. So we might as well offer the NACS port, and then if Electrify America is going to start offering NACS, then GM and Lucid are going to feel silly to offer CCS. They're like, well, our main charging provider offers NACS now at their new location, so why keep CCS around at this point?
How
Like the
ironic would that be that EA chargers offer NACS? Like
yeah,
it'd be the biggest comeback of the century, in my opinion, of just this very
it
terrible
wouldn't fix the
service.
problems they're having, but
Well, maybe
yeah,
that's the point, is that if VW gets on board and then Tesla's like, here's a contingency with the deal, your company, Electrify America, needs to fix their system because it is inherently terrible and it's not driving EV adoption
mm,
forward, it's driving it backward. Uh,
uh huh,
and maybe that becomes an okay, well, we need your help then with what we can do because you're already supplying us power banks because people have seen these in the wild. There's hidden
that's right.
Tesla power banks behind walls so
The
that
mega
way,
packs,
yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't look as embarrassing. Uh, but
That drives up the cost of the charger, all the walls you have to put around the mega
oh dear
pack.
lord. Anyways, so I think it makes sense at this point. Like if VW wants to join the next train and all that, that hopefully Tesla would be okay with. In my opinion, I'd say that Tesla would probably be more willing to help out with Electrify America chargers than they would with Lucid. For some random reason in my
Mm.
mind, I think that's how that ranks. Is like,
Well, because they like exist. They're a separate entity. They're not like startup slash Tesla runoff people. You know.
well, like adding Lucid to their charging network doesn't help that much because we've had this conversation before. Lucid isn't making a mass market EV. It's very much kind of like a
No,
rich man's toy per se. So
that's true.
it's not helping the adoption of EVs. But what does help is having better charging experiences. So if you're able
True.
to bring your tendrils into the pit of despair that is Electrify America charging and be able to change it for the better so that the interface is better, or maybe it's a little bit more Tesla-like, or anything else. Who knows?
Mm,
And then you also add on the NACS connector, so that way now the next biggest charging system in the United States that isn't supercharging, which is the Electrify America chargers, and then probably after that it's probably ChargePoint, because those are everywhere. If
yeah.
basically you convert all Electrify America chargers to also have an NACS port or exclusively an NACS port, then the rest probably fall in line, right? You probably get ChargePoint likely knocking on the door of Tesla saying, "Can we add NACS too?" And
Yeah.
then you get maybe EVgo doing that as well. Maybe not. Maybe that's just my hopeful
I thought
optimism.
EVgo said when they opened NACS that they were going to start offering it at their chargers. So
Hopefully,
I'm just I'm fascinated by the idea of all these meetings, like just how we're debating right now, is
right.
probably going on right now,
Mm-hmm.
especially because of this Ford announcement. I bet everybody at these automotive brands are coming together and going, okay, so it's not just Tesla anymore. We're not alone in this. I think we need to also consider switching. That seemed to have. I think Ford stock performed really well after they announced that as well.
I believe it did.
So
It and Tesla stock, I believe, went up, and which is a good sign. It means people are paying attention to the fact that this
yeah,
is good news and that you should be buying a bunch up,
yeah,
bunch of stocks up, because it's game changing for transportation in general. For the fact that a legacy auto company decided we do need help, and this is probably
mm-hmm,
the superior port to go with, and we
yeah.
need to go through with this because if we want people to buy our vehicles, we need a better charging system, and Tesla's already done that. So it only makes me
I
laugh
think it
thinking about
increased the desirability of all the existing Ford EVs now, knowing that
maybe
within 6 months they'll get an adapter that can access any supercharger. Like that's a huge advantage on any other non-Tesla, in my opinion. Now
right versus being constrained to the Magic Dock, in which we don't know what the rollout is for that because we don't really
there's
see
been
that.
like none.
It seems like we've only been left with 8 or 9 in the United States. I think it's like 8 or 9, right? Or is it maybe 10? I forget. But like,
Yeah, but it's double digits. It's not like you can't use it in an argument. Well, you can access certain superchargers. It's like, yeah, if you live in these three places,
mhm.
I guess. But
I did
yeah,
like
I
the
keep
fact
checking.
that what was it? I like the fact that Elon did comment on that adapter, saying that it won't be cost prohibitive. That it'll be easy to buy, or like it'll be financially
Probably a
easy
couple
to
hundred
buy.
bucks.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like it won't be breaking the bank in regards to like I need to pay $500 for this adapter.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it'll probably be hopefully around like 150 or something like that. So that way it's like, oh cool, now I have access to the supercharging network. I could charge wherever
Right.
I want without a problem versus what it's like today, which is you have to find that specific Magic Dock charger and then
If you
hope
live
that there's
in
spots.
Pennsylvania/New York,
Or California.
that's where all of them are. Well,
Right.
very specific part of California, there's like two. But yeah,
Yeah.
they haven't opened any more. So
That's
it's
not
not a
good.
great solution. And it's been like this for a while now. So I wonder if this ties into what the White House originally said, that like there would be, 7,500 new supercharger locations that are capable of charging CCS vehicles. Are they counting this because Ford gets their own special Magic Dock? They're like, see, it's open, technically.
That's what I was going to comment on earlier. Is just like it makes me laugh over the fact that the government basically was ignoring Tesla for all of last year and the year before and all that, like pretending he doesn't
Uh huh.
exist. And now they don't really have an excuse because they keep on saying, well, first they said GM was leading or Mary was leading at GM, and that's going great right now with them axing
Yeah.
the Bolt and everything, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which is very sad in my opinion. But
Yeah.
also saying like, oh, Ford is also moving or paving the path forward. But now Ford is like, well, we need Tesla's help. And so it's like, all right, well, if you're addressing Ford and Ford's addressing Tesla, is this
Mm-hmm.
like the commutative or transitive property that we learned in mathematics, where basically you're saying good job to Tesla without saying good job to, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
politics
it's hard to
is
ignore now.
hilarious in regards to just
Yes.
how it's a whole bunch of kids on a playground saying you hit me, no you hit me, or I'm not talking to you anymore, and all that. Just very funny.
Pretty much.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I this is something that definitely excited me. Probably at the same level that I think a couple days later, RJ was doing a whole Instagram stories thing, answering questions and all
Yeah.
that. And
RJ loves Instagram for some reason. He loves promoting his Instagram on Twitter, which I find interesting. Is Instagram more of a Rivian vibe than Twitter?
Instagram is very much a lifestyle type of app. It seems like very
Yeah.
much like, let me show you me hanging out at some spa or skydiving or at a lake, or they've got the whole like location thing as well. So like you can look at
Right.
look up a location, you'll just see a whole bunch of pictures of people at that location posing or whatever.
I
Um,
think RJ said that during the interview with Marquez. He was like, "We wanted to design a car in a way that you want to take pictures with it,
right.
or you want to take a picture of it in nature." So I guess in that way, the Rivian lifestyle brand, whatever, kind of goes hand in hand with Instagram. Twitter goes hand in hand with Tesla for obvious reasons, but Instagram and Rivian are like more of a matchup. But I
Right.
still get annoyed when they do those super long stories and there's all the cuts in
Oh,
between.
what was nice is I was able to keep up with it up till I think like maybe the halfway point. So it didn't seem as much as a daunting task to watch, because
Yeah.
basically the same way that I watched what's it called, Justice League, the Snyder cut.
Oh
I
yeah,
watched that
yeah.
in pieces, and what was nice is I watched all this kind of in pieces throughout the day, and then got busy at the end of the day. So then, what was it? At the end of the day, I basically just binged the rest of it and all that. But I don't know if
I
you.
just watched it on YouTube.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you saw the new prototype color, which is I think what
I did.
they called it evergreen, which
Yeah.
I thought was an interesting color choice, because it's kind of like the idea of like a muted color that like you don't really see it in many lights, but like in the right circumstances you can see it.
It's kind of like Midnight Cherry, right? Like the
Yeah,
lighting affects the color reflection. I don't know. Personally, I'm not a big muted colors guy. I like to be all in or
the red
on
canyons
whatever
and all
color you
that.
pick. Yeah, well, Red Canyon even is a little bit on the orange edge, but I like I do like Ultra Red. That feels
Okay.
a bit more consistent, I guess. But yeah, it's I mean, it's cool that they made this like I was just visualizing how did you paint one truck two colors? And they got it like even though it's a prototype, like the line is perfectly in line with the Rivian logo
I think
down
what
the
they did is
middle.
they probably just put some tape or whatever on one side of the vehicle, colored it in their paint shop system, and then brought it through again, but flipped the cover onto the other side. So that's how you get that perfect line down the
But they
middle.
had to get the tape really precise then. It had to be super sharp. Like this isn't your basic like slap some duct tape on there. Like they had to get some very precise measurements to paint it right. I mean,
Probably. Or you can think
it's
about
neat,
this.
but
They probably painted all one color, but then
uh-huh.
basically just taped. No, they painted all one color and then taped off one side and then colored it again. And that's
Yes,
how you get a nice one consistent line versus trying to tape it
probably.
twice. Anyways, I don't know how I feel about the color. It seems a little bit too. I don't know. Like you, I like more showy slash obvious colors that aren't as muted. Uh,
And RJ was acknowledging it on the story thing. He was like, "You probably can't tell this is green. It doesn't show up on camera very well." And I was like, "Okay, then what are we doing?"
right.
When it comes to pickup trucks, I'm a bit more Cybertruck esque, as in I like the no paint idea of just bare bones steel because this thing's gonna get all banged up. I don't know if you saw it, but Rich Rebuilds did this hilarious video about he bought this Rivian and after 2 days of owning it, someone rear-ended it.
I heard
But
about it. I
like,
never watched it, but I heard about it, and I thought, how and why? Like, how does this happen? I guess humans. obvious,
humans.
but at the same time, just like
No, it
how
was
crazy.
he talked about this design choice they made that is even worse on the Cybertruck, but it's I don't know if you saw that silver R1T you sent me earlier. If you look at that picture,
Yeah, that's the one that I drove.
the the one that like if you look at the back body panel, that's like right above the bumper,
Hmm.
that panel stretches all the way to the cab and then over the cab.
Okay.
It's one singular piece. And
Wow.
on the Cybertruck, it goes even further. It goes like down the windshield. And that's why, in case you were wondering earlier, someone said they got into like a minor fender bender and the Rivian repair was like $42,000
Right.
because they have to replace entire sides of the car because of that singular piece that stretches all the way from the back to the front.
Hmm.
And I guess taking all of that off and putting it all back is really complex. Most trucks have a
Right.
line there, like I think the F-150 Lightning. There's a gap between the bed and the cab.
Hmm.
So if you do get damage on the bumper or the side, it's just a bed panel, not like a whole roof panel attachment. I don't know if that affects the wiring up there. It probably does because of all the gear tunnel controls and stuff. So um,
Could be.
they're beautiful. They're beautiful vehicles, but watching that video did definitely make me think. Yeah, I think I want to see more emphasis on durability or repairability. I think the logic of the Cybertruck is that the exoskeleton is just going to be so strong that at a minor fender bender it won't do anything. Like you'd have to really hit the truck hard to actually damage the exoskeleton,
Hmm.
and in the case of the Rivian, most of that's probably just aluminum or more basic materials. Of course, they have to be painted and everything, and you got to paint match it, which is complex.
Sure.
Or
But
having it be a more traditional design like the F-150 so that it's not as crazy hard to work on. So I'm more skeptical of the how many color options. I feel like Rivian's got a lot of colors in the first place. Like they've
they
got a lot of
do,
paint.
and they're only going to probably add more with was it the R2, in which they also teased
Yeah.
in their Instagram stories and all that. In which initially I looked at, I'm like, oh look, a square vehicle, and then looked at it a little bit longer. I'm like, oh wait, that's just what's it called, a Bronco Sport, basically.
I mean, I was staring at that image for a long time too. I just get like, is it that much smaller than an R1S?
I think so. Uh,
To me, it looks very similar in size to the
I
R1S.
think it's probably a little bit shorter in length, and probably
Okay.
a little bit shorter in width. In terms of height, it's
Mm,
definitely shorter. But also,
yeah,
this is a clay model. They don't really have
that's
like
true.
a real prototype yet, so who knows? And also at the same time, the vehicle can raise and lower itself too. So it can be whatever height
Well,
that you
the
want
the
it.
S can maybe this one is more compromised or something.
Yeah, maybe instead of air, it's got springs as suspension. So
Maybe.
saves cost, and then also maybe still accomplishes everything they need. Not too sure. It was exciting to see that they actually answered that question, quote unquote, by just being like, "Yeah, here's a clay model that has a cover on it, so that way you can't see any of the details. Besides the fact that it looks like a Bronco Sport, but here it is." What I was a little bit more intrigued by is behind it there was
Uh-huh.
another clay model that was exposed. I was wondering if
Oh.
that's maybe another R2 platform as well. Maybe it's the
Mm,
R2T, if it's the truck
yeah, like
version
the
of it.
truck variant. Would
Seems
that be even smaller? Smaller than the R1T?
I would think so, right? Because it seems
I like
like
that idea.
with the 2 series, it seems like they're going a little bit more cost effective with it, right? So
Yeah, that's the whole point,
that's what makes
I
me think
think.
it's going to be smaller. But I don't know. I mean, you could say the same for the Lightning and the R1T, but I guess the R1T now costs, I think, probably on par with the R1T. Yeah, R1T and Lightning. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Um,
pretty close.
they're getting pretty close at this point just because Ford's like, wait, we need to make money on this. Uh,
And yeah, Rivian's kind of in the same boat, but you don't have as many dealer markups with Rivian, I guess, but
right.
still.
It doesn't seem like they're doing too much advertising from what I can tell.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they need to,
I haven't seen a
honestly.
Rivian ad really. I've seen Aptera
No.
ads all over Instagram, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They need to get their name out there because they haven't made anything yet. And at the same time,
Their investment mode.
they're
Yeah.
in investment mode, and also they've got a very unique looking vehicle that's nothing like you can probably justify a Rivian versus like, or not justify, but you can compare an R1T to any pickup truck easily. But it's hard to
Yes.
compare an Aptera to any like a Toyota Corolla or anything like that easily because they're
Right. It's like a new market segment entirely. They're going after a market that doesn't really exist at this point.
right. It would even be weird to try to compare it to like a was it a KTM Crossbow? No, that's a four wheeled vehicle. You know which ones I'm talking about. Basically, the other three wheeled auto cycles.
Yes.
It'd be tough to
I
compare
wouldn't
those
even really, I
because those don't
mean,
have a cabin.
yeah, they have three wheels, but that's pretty much the only similarity. Everything else is different. So, yeah, I think as long as Rivian doesn't go bankrupt, this stuff doesn't bug me. But when they're when they're focusing on little details like that, I'm kind of like, okay, uh, is that what we need more of? More paint options?
Right.
But yeah, I do think a NACS announcement would be huge. And I wonder, do you think they're staying quiet on R2 details because of Osborne potentially?
I don't know what Harry Osborne has to do with any of this, but no,
Avenge me.
I would say they're more of just trying to force focus on their existing products because that's what they're making right now. I mean, they've only
Yeah,
been making the R1T for what seems like a year and a quarter, I think.
I think a year and a half now, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a year and a half, and R1S just started to get into customer hands in the last few months. So,
Hmm.
and then now they're doing dual motor on it, so they're adding another uh, power, I guess, just configuration or option to their
Yeah,
existing cars. So it doesn't really make sense to
in-house
hype.
motor too.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to hype up a car that they haven't made yet. And this is something
Yeah.
that I'm a little bit salty on with Polestar because
Mm.
Polestar is like, hey, we've announced 3 through 6 now of our cars, but none of them are being produced yet, and it's kind of just I don't know it kind of puts a question mark in my brain every single time that they're like,
Uh huh.
here's this one. I'm like, is that one out yet? What's its specs? How's it compared to the other one? Like, I haven't seen anything on it and all that. Like, it seems very
They have
just.
like too much diversification in their product line.
Yeah, well, it just seems like you're trying to throw out all these ideas like what Nikola did, but
Right.
you're not really delivering on them. You're kind of just selling me on the idea that oh, you're making another sedan that's a little bit
Hmm.
sportier, or like you're making a SUV that's a little bit I don't know, has something else that's a tad different or something like that. Maybe it's got a trunk instead of a hatch or something like that. Um,
So it's good to have focus.
I
You
think it's
mean?
good to have focus is what I'm trying to get at is the fact that Rivian
Hmm.
is sticking with, even though that people keep on asking what seems like every single day, kind of like the same, probably the same people who are asking where are the Cybertruck or where is the Cybertruck,
Yeah.
are probably asking the same thing of where is the R2 and all that, R2S or R2T,
Mm.
whatever they want to ask about. And Rivian's
Yeah.
like, well, slow down. We just started making R1S in addition to R1T. And we're
Hmm.
trying to make these delivery vans, and we're probably going to try to make those be uh, publicly available so that way the public can use them as a van life van or whatever they want.
That'd be cool.
We're focusing on this stuff right now and software. They're trying to manage everything while they're still a small company. So it makes sense to me that they're pushing back against the community being like, yes, we're working on it, but please just be patient. There's so much more you can enjoy with our vehicles right now than what's coming up in the
Yeah.
future. And we're excited for the future, but let's focus on today, where companies like Polestar are like, well, look at tomorrow. Look at tomorrow times two.
Yeah.
But now it's got a fin on it. Now look at tomorrow, but it's a crossover and all that. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's I couldn't tell you from like the lineup that Polestar has which one is kind of which. It seems like it doesn't make
They
sense
all
to
kind
me.
of blur together, huh?
Kind of. Well, like you got Polestar 1, which I don't think was fully electric. I think it was partially electric, right? Or if it was fully electric,
Yeah,
I don't
it
know
was a
much about.
plug-in hybrid.
Yeah, it was a plug-in hybrid. Then I don't know too much about
Mm-hmm.
Polestar per se. Then, as you could tell, Polestar 2 was their first all electric and all that, and it has a distinctive look. It's all over the bay right now. People love that car. I think it's great.
Is it a sedan or a crossover?
It is a bit big.
It's a
Um,
crossover. It's something in the middle.
it's a below crossover, but still SUV type of
Not. We
size.
shouldn't call it a crossover. It's a on the line. It hasn't crossed yet, but it's there. It's petering. It's getting close. It's not all the way to sedan or to crossover. Something.
A centrist utility vehicle instead of a crossover utility vehicle.
The middle ground vehicle.
But then they
Yeah.
go like to the Polestar 3, which is then a crossover, and then they recently showed the Polestar 4, which is also like a crossover, but it's a little bit smoother, a little bit more like the Model Y with the curved back. And then
Uh huh.
Polestar 5 is apparently the prototype that they showed off a while back that looks like Polestar 6, which was also their vision or like their O2 concept and
Mm-hmm.
all that. But those are both like not roadsters per se, but it seems like yeah, I guess they are like 2 or 4 seater vehicles.
Right.
But like you said, they all kind of blend together, and they haven't started making any of them. Uh, and
Mm.
what's I think even more concerning to me is, out of curiosity, I looked at like their careers page to see, well, if they're announcing all these vehicles, they probably have a whole bunch of recruitment for manufacturing somewhere, either in the
Mm.
United States or overseas.
Yeah.
No, they have 14 available positions. As
Really?
of recording today, I
Jeez.
looked it up, and they only have like 14 available positions. I'm like, and you guys are announcing all these vehicles.
Yeah.
This is more concerning. I mean, this seems, I don't want to say it's like a Nikola red flag moment, but it feels like it with all the different products that you're announcing and saying that you'll deliver on in like the next couple of years, but you're not actively trying to push that behind the
Mm.
scenes with your careers page with trying to get people to build this, because you need a whole bunch of people to build it, unless you're banking on Volvo to build all of them, and that's just a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, it feels more like a PR thing. They just want to look like they're serious about it, and they have lots of offerings, but then you look into the details and it's like, oh,
Right,
you're not actually making that much. I don't even remember seeing Polestar on the list of like top EV registrations. They're not really up there, but
right.
I think it's a long way of saying Rivian is trying to avoid an Osborne moment where a bunch of people get what you they're in a tricky place. I think all companies face this at some point, but
Mm,
you have shareholders probably wanting more information on the R2, or people that are never going to buy the R1 because it's too expensive. They're all jumping down your throat like, "Hey, when are we getting R2 news?" But the existing companies like, "We need to make sure that we sell every R1 we make and
mm,
that we have somewhat of a decent margin on it." But like Tesla exposed them at the shareholder meeting, their margins are still not good. But they're like, we need to have consistent revenue coming in, so they're intentionally light on specs. But that got me wondering how, um, if they are, maybe they did decide to switch to NACS, but there's actually a big motivation to not talk about it. The more I think about it, like Ford got around it by saying we're going to do the adapter and you're going to be able to access the superchargers through the Ford Pass, Blue Pass app, whatever. Some Ford app is going to have supercharger integration.
mm.
Here's your Blue Pass. Go to the red charger. It makes so much sense. But if Rivian
The
has
red
decided
oval.
the red, if Rivian has decided, you know what, let's switch to NACS. Um, if they don't want to go the adapter route, potentially, you actually wouldn't want to announce that until like right before you start selling vehicles that have it, because then that would cause a huge influx of orders, obviously, or a bunch of people would be interested as soon as they found out it had NACS. But if you tell people we're going to switch to NACS in 2025 or in 8 to 9 months, then you'd probably get a huge decrease in orders because it means, oh, if I buy a Rivian now, I'm going to have to live with an adapter for the rest of its life. So
Hmm.
I guess that's kind of an interesting hypothetical in my mind is perhaps they have decided what they're going to use, but in the same way that they're quiet on R2, they're quiet about the transition because they know of the effect it would cause on current day vehicles. And maybe Ford doesn't care so much because they know their EV business isn't profitable anyway, and they can fund their endeavors through the gas vehicle business. So
Hmm.
they're like, we'll be fine. We're not too worried about Osborning, but Rivian might be a little bit more worried about it. So maybe the decision's already been made.
That'd
We
be
just don't know it
nice.
yet.
It seems like they're very gung ho on their adventure network, and that's something that they also
Yeah.
commented on during the live or the Instagram stories and all that, where RJ was
Hmm.
very much like, "Hey, here's our plan with the Adventure Network. We're gonna stick with what we got. We're going to add
Hmm.
on more chargers on the West Coast, more on the East Coast, connect them in between, and then from
Hmm.
there, once we populate enough in the U.S., we might also go down through Mexico to South America and actually kind
Right.
of deliver on our promise that we originally uh,
Long way up.
from Long Way Up that
Yeah.
they postulated, being like, hey, we put all these chargers in which they had to put so many small destination chargers all the
Hmm.
way from Chile up through wherever. Um,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, South America. I don't remember all of your states, but
Labels it
states,
whatever.
but yeah, Chile, whatever, Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pretty
but
much.
they're gonna have to go through there and eventually put Adventure Network stalls there, which I think will be exciting because potentially that means you can go all the way from Washington. Hopefully, they maybe carry that into Canada and then
Yeah.
up to
Yep.
Alaska. But basically, going from Washington all the way down to the
Right.
southern tip of the continent. Uh, that sounds exciting. That sounds like a very, I would never do it, but it sounds like a very fun road trip that I'd love to
Hmm.
observe someone do without many sacrifices. Unfortunately, I think it's not feasible because of many issues on the border between Mexico and South America with a lot of gangs and drug trade and everything else going on there. But
Yeah, but it wouldn't be a charging infrastructure limitation. There'd be other
that'd
limitations,
be a
but
geopolitical issue. But
yeah, you'd have that with gas too. You know,
right, yeah. Maybe take the Rivian on the boat over to the other side where
right?
it's a little bit safer and then
Yeah,
continue.
they'd figure it out. There'd be
Yeah.
a way,
But
but
it would still be exciting and I'd like to see that future where they do that. And if they did it with CCS, I understand because that's just something that they're not willing to compromise on. But it would be nice if they switch over to NACS and it'd actually be more of an incentive, maybe not more of an incentive, but it'd be a nice talking point for Tesla to say, hey,
yeah,
we even reached the southern tip of South America and we supply
right.
cars to South America with Giga Mexico or Monterey or whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Um, and you're able to go wherever you want in South America thanks to our partner with Rivian or partnership with Rivian, and then also some of
Hmm.
the other superchargers that we put in Brazil and other places.
Yeah, I would be a lot more interested if it was Nax. I think that it's kind of weird because Rivian has so much cash in the bank that they can kind of afford to stick to their guns, even though I don't think this isn't a gun to stick to. Like, I'm gonna be annoyed if in interviews we're like, RJ, why don't we switch to Nax? And he's just like, well,
I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah. He's just like, well, CCS has so many benefit. No, that's not right either. Well, we already spent the money on a CCS infrastructure, and it would be
I think
time
it'd say
consuming
we're
to.
confident with our adventure network that our customers can get from point A to point B seamlessly without any issue. I think is maybe more of the story that
Yeah.
they would spin is that they're
Well, they'd
focused on
have.
our customers in adventure
Mm-hmm.
and their system right now allows for it. And it's not
Yeah.
disparaging Tesla and their system, and it's not saying
Mm-hmm.
that their system is bad either. It puts both of them in a good, or it doesn't put Tesla in a good lot, or it's not being uh, condescending to Tesla, or at least being ignorant to Tesla, or I guess the NACS port in general. But it's
Hmm.
also just them flouting that, hey, look at all the places that you could charge with our vehicle. Go buy a car that is a Rivian. Um, is I
I
think
just
more of the
think it
story
would
that they'd spin.
it would help their argument a lot more if they accessed the far larger, far more plentiful, reliable network. But at the same time, I'm concerned that, like, well, they have so much money in the bank, they're burning so much cash anyway, that they could probably just say, well, the solution is not switch to NACS. The solution is we need to put adventure network chargers everywhere to where they're just as common as superchargers. It's like, okay, that's going to be really expensive, and you're still going to
Valero
have the worst
versus
connector.
Chevron.
It would just be a big headache, but I guess they
Yeah.
could technically just build out their own network. But that's better than relying on EA solely, I guess. But still, I'm just now even more pumped for the Ford T3 project because
Mm.
active arrow, 400-mile range, they're saying, higher voltage architecture, and an AX port. I'm just like, this thing sounds awesome. Like, I love everything they've said about it so far. The design is kind of irrelevant to me at this point. I don't really care what it looks like as long as it has a massive emphasis on efficiency and it has NACS. I'm in. Like,
Sure.
and Cybertruck
Versus
is
239 kilowatt hour battery, and it looks
yeah.
like a brick with another brick on top of it, with another brick behind it.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Will Ram switch to NACS? I
Ooh,
hope.
that is a good question, right? Is like, will Stellantis even think about it with Chrysler, Fiat, Dodge, Ram? Like they have a lot of vehicles that, or I guess brands that they have to bring into the EV future, and they would probably stand to benefit the most out of probably any other, maybe GM as well, but like they're probably on par with like the amount
Hmm.
of companies that are associated with them. That
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
switch to NACS, it's a big selling point for all their brands. Like you can charge your I don't know, Chrysler 300 EV
Yeah.
at a supercharger with no problem and all that, or like
Hmm.
go grab your Fiat 600e and you can now charge it without any problems, or grab your 1500 EV,
Hmm.
plug it in without a problem. I think that it would be a very great selling point for me as someone who's very interested in the Ram EV or Ram 1500 EV.
Yeah.
But at the same time, uh, it just makes more sense than trying to rely on Electrify America, who isn't changing anything, and they're actually um, degrading in regards to their service towards their customers. And then
Hmm.
maybe trying to rely on, or maybe making a partnership with ChargePoint or EVgo, but it's I do not want to charge a 239, is it 239 or 219
Yeah. I think
uh,
something like that.
kilowatt hour battery at a charge point. That sounds like your car is going to be stuck there
No.
for a whole week.
Well, you're gonna, yeah, with a battery pack that big, you're gonna be having long charging sessions, even at high speed. Even 250 kilowatts would take an hour when you think about it. That's assuming no charge tapering.
Right.
So it'll be a long charging session with that truck regardless. So
Yeah.
that's even more reason as to why they should adopt NACS, because it can support the higher voltages, and Tesla's probably going to roll out V4 superchargers faster than anyone else can, which are all going to be high voltage equipped. They better be, right? The Cybertruck's supposed to be coming out in a couple months. Where are the
That,
V4 chargers?
that's an exciting reality to think about, is that this giant polygon that started this podcast and your channel
Yes,
is finally coming to production in hopefully a couple months. Um,
I hope. Yeah.
Already, I mean, we're already halfway through the year at this point, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of crazy to think about, or at least maybe not exactly halfway, but we're getting there.
Pretty much halfway.
The fact that that is on the, it's not even on the horizon anymore. It seems like it's cresting the horizon
Yep.
with its giant light
Prototype
bar and all
sightings
that.
and the tooling, and we're seeing inside and the castings for it and everything. It's like, oh, it's surreal. It felt infinite, and I remember everyone calling it vaporware, and
It still
it,
technically is true.
everything is vaporware until it has been delivered to a customer, I guess.
So then the Lordstown Endurance is not vaporware.
Yes,
Because it has been
that's
delivered,
real,
but
but the
then they
Cybertruck's
stopped and then
not real.
recalled. So,
That's
yeah.
all made up. All of that stuff around the factory, it's all fake. Elon fabricated all of that. None of it's real.
It's all cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, yeah.
It was very
It's all meant to
convincing for
boost the
Randy when he
stock.
visited. They had some really tall cardboard cutouts in the distance. That way it felt
That's
like it
right.
was a factory. But in actuality, they rented some construction equipment, put it around their giant cardboard cutout of a factory,
Mm-hmm.
and said, "Yeah, we're definitely building stuff, but you can't get close." Even though that he somehow made it as close as he did. Still unbelievable that Randy did that. He was able to get that close without any
He did.
issues.
We'll get there. We'll get there someday.
Maybe it would be nice if
Eventually.
they opened like a garden there, kind of like what they plan on with. I guess they are planning on something like that there. Maybe I'm thinking about Giga
Well,
Berlin, but
Elon said that at one point. That doesn't mean it'll happen.
true, right?
But Elon said is not a good source, I've discovered. That never pays off.
Usually it changes a lot in reality.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any final thoughts or questions or topics before we wrap up?
I don't want to ramp up. I wanted to pose the nice, I guess, mid-season finale, if we want to call it this,
Okay.
episode for Taylor's of EV podcast. Pose a nice kind of question. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what do you expect to change, or like what are you anticipating in the later half of this year that
Mm.
isn't the Cybertruck?
That was a very well phrased question. I was going to say, I think everyone's expecting the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for me, I would be most excited for Aptera getting the ATVM loan, which
Okay.
they've said can fully fund their production path, because we didn't talk about it much today, but Aptera is definitely like my favorite EV startup. Like, if people ask me, what would you make if you were designing your own EV or a new EV company from the ground up, they're doing everything I would do. Like, they think the way I think, and I don't think you can box three-wheeler into the same category as other three-wheelers. I don't think you can box it into the same category as the next generation vehicle platform, the 25K car. Like, it doesn't align with that. It doesn't really align with anything. It's like a brand new segment, self-charging EV. I love that. I want that. And I don't really see anything else in the market like it. And I think they're learning. I think they're doing things wisely by working with Monroe. And kind of like what we talked about today, Lordstown and Lucid both start with an L. Maybe that's the key to
Loss.
it.
Big L.
They both showcased how you can ramp production poorly. Like
You chose poorly.
like a lot of people, I think, whenever we talk Aptera, are just like, I don't care. They're not in production. They need to get into production. Production is what all that matters. I don't care. Everything they say is just, everything they showcase is just talk, and none of it matters until you get into production. Okay, here's a few startups that went into production: Lordstown, Lucid, Canoe, kinda. They somewhat started. They had the big earnings report. Official
Well,
start
here,
of production.
Faraday as well.
Faraday, that's another good example. You can be a startup that gets to production, but I think a lot of people just assume that means all your problems are solved. In
Quite the
reality,
opposite.
you can. Yeah, and Sandy Monroe has talked about this too, which is why I think Aptera is being very wise about being calculated and making sure we're not going to start production slowly. We're only going to start when we can build them at a full speed for a full shift, so that we don't bankrupt ourselves, because obviously production is super expensive.
Gotta pay
So
workers.
They could probably use some more basic composites, kind of like how they designed the Gamma prototype, and they could probably just start cranking out some hand build ones and just build one or two a day
The
and
Roadster
do limited
approach.
production. But they realized that wouldn't work. You couldn't scale it up, and you'd have service issues, and you wouldn't have the revenue to compensate for the increased overhead. So there is a wrong way to quickly get into production, and I think Lordstown, as a good example, is showing maybe production above all else isn't the right way of handling it. And Lucid ramping up production and everything. Oh wait, no one wants to buy these. Oh shoot. Okay, we can't make money off our car. Maybe we can make money off our investors. Let's just start selling all of our stock and we'll keep the company afloat with that, because as you ramp up Gravity, that's going to increase their overhead too. So sure, they're gonna, with this capital raise, they're gonna keep themselves afloat for another couple of years, but that doesn't really fix the situation of the demand for their product and the overhead. Like, you're still not profitable just because you made an SUV. That doesn't switch everything around. So I think Aptera is just being very lean and very efficient with, let's keep our overhead low and our margins reasonable, so that when we can start production, and that might mean putting the company in hibernation mode and just focusing all in on investors, which is what they're doing right now, that's kind of your best bet as they wait for the ATVM loan. But I'm hoping they get approval for that later this year. And if they do, I'll feel a lot more confident that yeah, they're gonna make it. It's just gonna take longer because government loans are always more complex than just getting straight cash. Because you have to prove that you're buying the equipment that you say you are, and you have to individually ask for grants, and you got to pay back the loan with interest, of course. So it's going to take a while. I don't expect Aptera to enter production this year, and maybe not even next year, but I do think it'll be worth the wait. I do think they'll get there. It's just going to be annoyingly slow. Um, so I'm excited for any kind of Aptera updates like that. But
Sure.
also, anything outside of that, I guess the Rivian Max Pack will be cool. Finally, an electric truck with
Right.
400-mile range. That should be happening. That should hopefully start delivering by the time
I think it's
I
at the
come
end of
back
the
on the
month.
podcast. Yeah,
Is that they
that's really
start
soon.
producing it, or at least start having it go into vehicles. Whether that goes to customers, we don't know. But at least actually testing it out a little bit more in a production environment is
That's
likely
awesome.
what they're trying to do right now. But yeah, me too. I think that's a really great thing to anticipate. I think if I were to only choose one to answer this question of what I'm anticipating that isn't Cybertruck,
Uh huh.
or things that I'm looking forward to in the later half of this
Mm-hmm.
year, is probably the integration of the Blade batteries into the
Ooh.
Giga Berlin Model Ys. I think that's happening right now or this year,
Yeah, I
if
saw
I'm right.
some charging curves on those. They were
Right.
impressive.
I'm very
Yeah.
interested in those, just with like the
Mm-hmm.
different design with LFP, but then also taking advantage of efficiency, so that way it cools better. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
it accomplishes things a lot more effectively compared to what yours does, just as the giant brick that it is.
And
Not
it's
saying it's a bad
structural,
brick.
I think.
It's also structural as well, right? So it's a lot more
Yeah.
efficient in regards to that. It's leaning more into what the Model Y is trying to be now, which is a structure dependent battery, or not structure independent, structure dependent. It's a
I
structural
think it is
battery
dependent.
pack. Anyways,
Yeah, it's a good idea. And LFP is underrated, in my opinion, and underutilized. So anytime someone uses it, I'm like, yes.
right.
And Project Highland, I guess. Mike's not as interested in that, I guess.
I'm
I'm
tired.
curious.
My goodness, it seems like for the last week it's been Elon is going to China. They're going to show him the Highland Model 3. And it's like, how do
Yeah,
you
that I
know
didn't
this?
believe at all.
Like,
The wording never made sense.
well, I
I couldn't
just
tell if the headline was saying Elon will see Project Highland, and I was like, you don't need to be in China to see the concept of the new design. I saw Highland in a leak, and I didn't have to go to China. I didn't even have to go to Fremont. Someone just pulled the tarp back. I think he knows what it looks like. But some headlines were like, Giga Shanghai will show Elon Highland, and then other headlines were, Elon will show Highland to China. And I was like, I think something's getting lost in translation. There were people DMing me about that. They were like, they're going to reveal it this weekend. And I was like, I don't think they are. I don't think you're reading that right.
My only, my biggest pushback is like people are making this seem like it's a new vehicle, in which it sounds like it's a new vehicle with the exterior, but like the interior is probably still
Eh,
staying the same. But even still, what I'm getting at is
barely.
like you're making it bigger than it is. It's a refresh, which is nice. It's getting a facelift, just like the Model S and X did. It
Yeah.
might be more significant than what the Model X saw in regards to the most recent refresh on the exterior, right? Because I'd say the most apparent refresh to the S and X was from their original looks, or at least for the Model S, from its original
Yeah,
gill
the big
guppy
oval.
look to
Yeah.
what kind of looks more modern now and timeless. Uh,
I don't know if I
where,
love the new Highland design though. That the no
yeah,
fog lamps anymore. I maybe I'll get used to it, or maybe I haven't seen it in the right light. But I don't care either way. I'm curious to see the redesign, even though I'm not like in the market for it by any means. I'm just
right.
curious. It's a very difficult position they were put in, according to the Bloomberg report, of like, we want you to increase desirability but lower costs. And I'm like, how are they going to do that? What do you take out? What do you leave? What do you improve?
Mm-hmm.
What do you not improve?
Well, I think
And we
my
saw the
theory
video of the
is,
on screen
oh, the swiping
gear
and all that.
selector and everything.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
interesting.
my theory is that with whatever talk is going, I'm paying slightly attention to it, but it's mainly just
Okay.
getting shoved in my face thanks to Twitter algorithms and all that. I'm kind of just like, please stop
You're done.
shining the light in my face.
The
But
Matrix LEDs are blinding you.
right, but it what I'm getting from it is that like it'll be a nice refresh, kind of like with what the Model S went through, where and the X, where
Yeah.
the production line is probably shut down, and that's why we're kind of seeing reports of a production line being shut down so that retooling can be done, so that way
And inventory is getting discounts now.
and inventory is getting discounts, which is also what I wanted to note as well, is that this is signs that something is going on with the Model 3, whether you like it or not. whether
I'm
you
pretty certain. I still see some
yeah,
people that are like, it's all made up. Highland's totally fake.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I understand, like, as someone who's engaged in the Apple community, there's definitely fake leaks, but this is like manufacturer plates
Mm-hmm.
on a vehicle covered up that we then saw uncovered with the redesign, and then drone footage of the Fremont factory with a guy reaching for a gear stock that, wait, there's no gear stock, puts it in reverse on the screen and then backs up. And I'm like, okay, even if that's just a prototype, they're definitely toying around with something. Like, they've
Right.
got to have something in the work. How soon we see it, that's up for debate. Will it actually be cheaper, or will they jack up the prices? In the past, when Tesla did big facelifts, it typically came with a price hike, not a price decrease. So,
Mm-hmm. Another evident thing was it some pictures over Fremont Factory, because people love flying their drones over Fremont Factory,
mm-hmm.
is that the delivery aisle basically for the threes is noticeably shorter than it typically is compared to what the Model Y looks like. I mean, Model Y is their golden goose egg at this point, but like, uh,
Yeah,
it's noticeably shorter than it typically is for the Model 3's delivery queue and all that.
right,
So that basically just tells me that either that's the end of it, of their supply of Model 3s, and they're just trying to get rid of as much as they can, and then it's all just going to be reliant on used or existing inventory for a while
right.
until they make this update. Or they start importing made in China or made in
True, true.
Germany Model 3s to
My
supplement
guess,
those that want Model 3s in the United States or Canada, though I guess
yeah,
already they're sending 3s to Canada from
they
China.
are.
So
Yep.
I
My
think that
guess
just
is
sells it
that
for
they
me.
would, if they're getting new orders after they shut down the Model 3 assembly line, they're just going to tell you to wait longer. And
Sure.
those are the lucky people that are going to get somewhat legacy pricing with the refresh.
I think it's actually a
Like,
lot more interesting because you might potentially get, yeah, it's going to be a Chinese made LFP, but like it's meant for America. So you're going to get some of those quirks of like something that you wouldn't see before, right? We don't get Model 3s imported in the United States. We import Model 3s over to somewhere else. So you'll have a
Yeah.
unique vehicle if they choose this path to import Model 3s from China to America for customers that want a Model 3 now, while Fremont is doing its retooling finally. Finally, they either slow down the
They would,
bus or
yeah.
they're tipping the
They'd
bus
have
so
to
that way
miss
they can
out on the
change the
tax
wheel.
credit. They wouldn't
Yeah.
get the tax credit in
It
that
doesn't
case. So
matter at that
that's
point,
why I
right?
think,
Because they're more interested in a sale, right?
yeah, they would just have to disclose that on the website. I think it might get a little complicated. My guess is that they would just tell you your order's taking longer than expected, and then when the refresh is ready, okay, here's your car. Legacy pricing a bit, but it still gets the credit rather than import just enough to hang over in between the refresh.
Mm,
But um, yeah, see, that's why it's interesting. I don't know what they're gonna do. It's kind of like up in the air, but we should have answers by the end of the year. So
right.
that's on my list. I guess there's a lot of interesting stuff going on.
I
Will
think so.
Lucid die?
Will the gravity actually make it to the ground or not? Um,
Mm,
I don't know. More things to
real talk.
consider. Real talk. Air talk.
Well, good
Gravity talk.
questions. And thank you for joining us on this long journey. And we hope to be back I hope to be back in a couple months. Randy should be back sooner, hopefully. And we'll catch you all next uh, quarter. Take care.
See
Bye
y'all.
bye.